Assalamu alaikum fam. Hope you are doing fantastical. Alright, we are still reading Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan. It has been quite nerdy. We were in part 1, chapter XII. Let's begin. The topic had a lot to do with invisible agents, natural cogitation, the soul of man, kind of how there's this looking glass and what we perceive, pretty much the immaterial. And then he went into the spirits being incorporeal and such. And then he talked about God being infinite, omnipotent, and eternal. Let's continue along the same lines. Then, for the way by which they think these invisible agents wrought their effects, that is to say, what immediate causes they used in bringing things to pass. So here, he's using plural, right? Now he's saying invisible agents causing something in human affairs. Well, instead of saying these agents, one would be better minded to say Allah has decreed that. Because when you make it sound like all these little tiny sprites and ghosts and stuff are having impact on your reality, well, that can kind of create a satirical image in one's mind when it's actually more complicated than that. Men that know not what is that we call causing, that is, almost all men, have no other rule to guess by, but by observing and remembering that they have seen to proceed the like effect at some other time, or times before, without seeing between the antecedent and subsequent event. So here it's like he's saying, that people don't always see the cause, but they'll guess through observation, and then they'll remember what preceded it and what was the after effect, and then through that, they'll begin to develop a pattern of recognition. Any dependence or connection at all, and therefore, from the like things past, they expect the like things to come. So what you saw happen before, you think is going to happen again, is what he's saying. And hope for good or evil luck superstitiously from all things that have no part at all in the causing of it. See, this is the thing that is very important, because he has made it sound like these incorporeal spirits, these bodies invisible, are playing roles superstitiously in giving humans bad luck. This kind of minimizes spirituality and really makes it a sort of thing to be mocked at. Instead, a more pious person, a Muslim, has a better argument in terms of Allah has permitted something to occur. It's going to play out how it occurs, and you need to trust your affairs to Allah Azza wa Jal, because He's the disposer of affairs. And don't try to figure out how this happened, and put your trust in a sequence of events, and then see omens everywhere and be crippled by superstition. Rather, you trust in Allah and you navigate the good and the bad of it, because the good and the bad is your destiny, your qadr, and it's all going to help you in your test and trial in life. And so don't depend upon pattern recognition. I mean, for certain things, yeah, right? You need to have, okay, if I cross the street, I don't look left, I don't look right, I might get hit by a car. That is a common sense pattern recognition thing, right? But if you are trying to say, one time I was walking and there was a bluebird, and then the bluebird pooped on my shoe, and every time I go there, I see the bluebird, now I think it's gonna poop on my shoe. And then it does a second or third time, you're like, I guess every time I see a bluebird, I get poop on my shoe. It's like, is it just because that bird is, has a personality where it likes to poop on things, or is it some evil, stupid sprite causing something? You see what I'm saying? So always be able to explain how Allah the Most High is above what they associate with Him in terms of partnership, right? And polytheists are the ones whom you would have to ask, right? Those with whom they see a deity, a demi-deity, a spirit, and many things, right? They're the ones you'd have to ask. But as a Muslim, you're not supposed to be crippled by superstitions of pagans. I mean, you can be aware if someone's trying to do like the dark arts and stuff, but I don't think you would then think they have control over your destiny, because then you would be violating Tawheed, because no one has dominion over what happens to you. And if you trust in something other than Allah, you've committed shirk. So if you think some sprite is doing something to you, well, then you have a problem. There's a different thing when it comes to jinns and stuff and evil, but that's a separate matter. As the Athenians did for their war at Lepanto, demand another Phormio, the Pompeian faction for their warfare in Africa, another Scipio, and others have done in diverse occasions since. So, speaking about when Scipio went to Africa because they sided with Pompey in the war of Gaius Julius Caesar, so if you don't know that context, that's what he's talking about. The Roman Senate split and chose sides. Some chose to go with Antony, Mark Antony that is, and Gaius Julius Caesar, and others chose to go with Pompey Magnus. In the like manner, they attribute their fortune to a standard by, to a lucky or unlucky place. So here again, we don't have that, so you can see the beauty of our religion. He's mocking how they're like, oh, this is an unlucky place. We can't be here. So he's pointing out the superstitions of the polytheistic Greeks and Romans and Egyptians even, right? How this is, this area, and if you go here, this will happen to you. And so-and-so was next to you, so then something bad happened. That is beyond the common sense realm. Now, that doesn't mean if I stand next to somebody high on crystal meth who's hallucinating, God forbid, but when they attack me, that's my own fault because I stood next to a meth head. It doesn't mean that there's some superstition there. I didn't do the common sense thing, and now I've paid for it, right? So that's part of the problem. And you don't have to look at a geographical location as lucky or unlucky. This is a common vernacular, but there's also a double meaning to the word luck. The Chinese luck, Irish luck, being unfortunate, an unhappy series of events, a fortunate thing to happen to you. There's lots of different ways this is used, but in the religious sense, you wouldn't want to use the word luck, in terms of our religion, because then you're attributing something to have an effect upon you outside of God. Now, the nuance here is if I go to a ghetto where people are selling crack and I get shot, I was in a bad area. It doesn't mean that the place itself is unlucky. Rather, it's a danger zone and I should have stayed out. And I was being stupid by going there in the first place. So it's if you say in a vernacular way, in a common language way, oh, you're so unlucky, man, that you got shot there. Well, you would say, you'd have to really watch out, because when you say the word luck, like I said, it has several meanings, right? Spiritual and then just common slang. But again, better word would be, it's unfortunate. Like, oh, well, shouldn't go there. So you have to be careful with people saying, this place is an unlucky place. Everyone who goes there, this happens to them. Is it because that land is cursed, or is it just because criminals reside there? You see what I'm saying? To words spoken, especially if the name of God be amongst them, as charming and conjuring, the liturgy of witches. So liturgy of witches, what he's saying is that, witches who would conjure things with their words. Words spoken, spelling, right? To cast a spell through your words, right? The vernacular of their riddles and all the weird things that those retarded witches do, right? So he's comparing the mumblings of witches and the superstitions of the Romans and people not knowing the causes and recognizing patterns and saying how that leads people to be dogmatic or believe they're pious. So he's digging a nail at religion, but at the same time he recognizes that there is an eternal God, and that God is incomprehensible and infinite and omnipotent. And rather, it's very difficult to give an intelligible definition because it's hard to even honor God and to really see the significations of everything. And we cannot necessarily do that through our mind. Now, we as Muslim, we have our attributes and things that we identify God with, right? Allah Azza. But he's pointing out, different factors from another perspective. So he's done quite a lot in this paragraph thus far. So hopefully, you see where he's coming from. But when someone says, like, the mumbling of witches and stuff, they're kind of mocking spirituality and religion. But at certain points, they have a point if these people, in my opinion, are in a state of jahiliyyah. Because some people really are crippled by delusional superstitions, right? Where they've lost spirituality and have, seen a spook in every corner, as they say. Insomuch as to believe that they have power to turn a stone into bread into a man, or anything into anything. Yeah, so he's saying how the transformations, spells that some witches can tend to have, like they're gonna turn so-and-so into something, that people would really believe that. That's something way stranger. But then he's also taken a jab at, I believe Christians contend Jesus casts out demons and they went into pigs and they ran off a cliff or something. So he's, mentioning transfiguration, but at the same time possession. Because for something to go into something, it animates it and takes it over, and it's now transformed into something else. And Catholics, when they contend someone gets possessed, their body's going to change. Something inside of them is going to change. Cultists would say the person could turn more beautiful or more ugly, but something beyond the original affair is going to occur. So it may not be that they're transformed into a frog, but it rather can mean their beauty gets enhanced because they sold their soul, or they've done so many sins and they've channeled so many demons that they now look as demonic as they actually are. And that's a form of transformation for them. Hobbes is a very well-read person, so when we read his things, he's concise, but he has packed in many things in there that you have to kind of know what he's talking about. So hopefully you got something really nerdy from this, but what do you think? It's really fun if you go and look at, the Pompeian and Caesarean wars. They're actually really interesting. I wish there was more works on Scipio, because you wonder why, they ran away from Caesar, but that's another story for another time. Hopefully you enjoyed, fam. Have a good day.